All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
I wanted to mention that Congress has unveiled a $1.2 trillion plan to fund its agencies through September 30th. These congressional leaders have released some details of this $1.2 trillion deal to keep open most U.S. government agencies through September 30th. This comes just days before a Saturday deadline for a partial government shutdown. This package is being backed by President Biden and leaders of both parties. It imposes a 6% funding cut on the State Department and foreign operations. Interestingly, there are some interesting provisions in here. It bans U.S. embassies from flying the LGBTQ pride flags or other non-U.S. official flags. Republicans had pushed for a cut of 22% to domestic spending, but they were not successful in getting that full cut. Some other interesting provisions is it doubles security funding for Taiwan, prohibits any effort to ban gas stoves in the U.S., claws back $20 billion in funding for tax collection.
Stop for a minute. Wait a minute. What did you say? Say that it prohibits any effort. Say that again.
It prohibits any effort to ban gas stoves in the U.S. You're acting like this is news to you.
like a gas stove, like for your home.
Yes, you're missing out on this, Phil. That our government has been spending a lot of time recently trying to ban gas stoves in the U.S. for environmental purposes.
All right, there we go. That's going to solve the problem. Now we are aligned. We got it going. I mean, we are a first world, first class country. There we go.
So this new bill, this new bill prohibits any additional efforts to ban gas stoves in the U.S. It claws back $20 billion in funding for tax collection from Biden's signature inflation law, and continues a long-standing freeze on lawmaker pay. Interestingly, it also provides $200 million for a new FBI headquarters in suburban Maryland. So just a few things that are in this new funding bill, but everybody should rest assured that our federal government will get to continue operating with this new $1.2 trillion plan when it gets passed.
All right. We got money. Let's go.
Yes, got money to spend. Not sure what it'll do to inflation, but that remains to be seen, and that'll lead into Jessica's talk probably about talent these days. So the next is breastfeeding workers have really been targeting fast food and retailers under the new law. We've discussed the Pump Act recently in light of a Texas decision that said that the law is not in effect in Texas for Texas employers, but that court decision was limited just to Texas. Recently, about 12 employers have been hit with federal lawsuits under the Pump Act, which was enacted in December 2022. That gave workers the right to sue their employers for monetary damages if they don't give them enough time or private conditions to express breast milk. So there have been some safeguards in place since Obamacare passed for about a decade ago, but there were some loopholes in there in that law. In this Pump Act really did close those loopholes. And one of the most important pieces of this is that this act, there really are employees who struggle with where to go and are often told just go pump in your car or go pump in the employee break room, and they're forced to live without the complete privacy while pumping. And the previous Labor Department enforcement efforts on this, they were really hampered by the weak legal remedies of the lactation provision of Obamacare. But under the Pump Act, workers can now sue their employers for lost wages, liquidated damages, and punitive damages, among some of the other remedies. Now,
so Burt, if we're thinking about this for a minute, and you're listening to the program, what are a few things that employers can quickly just observe about their workplace or ensure that they have alignment on to avoid any of these lawsuits?
Yeah, I think the biggest things, and that gets to the point of these cases that have been filed in the restaurant and retail industry, is that those buildings really are not physically equipped to provide a private space for pumping. And so the first and foremost, employers need to think about where they can provide a private space for females to express their breast milk in the workplace.
So we're thinking that, so I'll just take some workplaces and conversations I've had, and someone said, well, we don't have any pregnant workers today, or we don't have any nursing mothers today. If we do, we will identify a place. Is it something I need to do now before we are confronted with that and let people know, or is it something that is okay to do when the situation presents itself?
Well, I would always suggest, Phil, that we think about it in advance so that we're not panicking at the time the request is made. And you want to make sure that wherever the location is, that it is private, preferably with a room that locks. It needs to have a seat, a small table, and an outlet to plug in the breastfeeding pump. People also could use a manager's locked office. So you need to be thinking about this ahead of time. And if you are in the restaurant and retail industry, one of the things that we're seeing pop up is that there are these lactation pods that could be rented or purchased to put into a location where somebody can go in and express breast milk. And again, if you get to the restaurant and retail industry, if you think about the layout of your average fast food restaurant, really the only private space in that restaurant that's not a bathroom, which isn't even fully private, that's only semi-private, is the manager's office. And so there's these lactation pods, we might start seeing those popping up in more and more
pun
locations.
Intended there. Yeah.
There you go.
There's
Freudian
one for
slip.
the blooper reel, Nick. There's one for the blooper reel. All
Yes.
right, that's great. What else you got on docket there, Burt?
All right.
Anything?
The last one I want to talk about is, we've talked about this on the program before. Chibs has talked about this before on the program. I've talked about it, but OSHA is nearing the enactment of a rule that specifies that workers can choose whoever they want to represent them during safety and health inspections. So again, we've been talking about this for a while. This largely reinstates a 2013 Obama era policy that was reversed under the Trump administration. And basically what it says is that if an OSHA inspection is taking place, safety or health inspection, that the employee gets a representative to go accompany the OSHA inspector during the investigation. And now this, again, I want to stress, this is a very, very union-backed effort to get union officials on site during a safety inspection. And it doesn't matter if you're—
I can see this being a big deal, definitely during a union campaign. Often you'll have formal complaints, and OSHA show up during that time. And, you'd normally be able to keep your union rep out who's trying to organize your facility, and here it'd be a clear invitation to come in. Yes.
Yes, and now the big deal is that the OSHA inspector can turn down the representative's participation, but basically this rule is expected to allow workers at non-union work sites to select an inspection representative who is not a coworker. So that gets to your point, Phil, that they may choose to select a union organizer or someone else of their choosing to accompany the OSHA inspector. But again, that OSHA inspector can turn down that representative's participation, but my hunch is we won't be seeing much of that.
Well, the key thing is the OSHA inspector can turn it down, but it does not sound like the employer can. And that's, again, I think what Chibs would say, when OSHA shows up, that's when you want to call our friends over at Ogletree and get some guidance right from the beginning. So you don't get yourself in a little unanticipated trouble there by turning someone down that shouldn't be under these new guidelines, for sure.
That's exactly right. There's a lot more in the news, but I think in the interest of time filled, we'll cover those 3 today.
All right, that sounds good. We'll stick with that.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link aimea.org/thisweekatwork, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.